Excellent. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the keynote by Manoj Kohli. Glad you could join us from wherever you are around the world on what promises to be an informative and insightful 60 minutes. So I'm Abs Bulbulia, and I'm the Energy Program Director at Startup Bootcamp. So Startup Bootcamp helps ambitious founders scale through a suite of programs and accelerators for startups, scale-ups, students, and corporates. We are a global organization with a global footprint helping innovators ideate, grow, and scale. In Australia, we are proud to have a number of programs, including in energy, fintech, sports and event tech, corporate innovation, and growth hacking. Our portfolio of energy offerings in Australia include an energy accelerator for early stage smart energy startups, with 31 startups having gone through the accelerator over the last 3 years. Our scale program, called the Energy Tech Hub, connects commercial-ready scale-up solutions to challenges and opportunities in the Australian energy market, with currently 9 scale-ups being helped to enter the market here in Australia. And the India Virtual Trade Mission, in partnership with Global Victoria to connect the Victorian and Indian smart energy ecosystems. We're extremely proud to partner with Global Victoria to help reimagine what the trade mission could be in a travel-restricted world. The outbound trade mission takes Victorian businesses and organizations overseas to international markets, showcasing their business capabilities and connecting them with key buyers, trading partners, and business leaders. The virtual trade mission is designed to replicate those goals and help Victorian and Indian startups and scale-ups to gain in-depth exposure to trade and investment opportunities in the energy sector. The mission will provide the startups with an in-depth understanding of market opportunities, explore how Victoria and India can innovate to solve shared energy problems through smart solutions, and open important corporate connections. We are very pleased to have 8 amazing startups: Foha, Lex Technologies, WePower, DS Power Sensor, Edge Electrons, Heart Bioenergy, Inverted Power, and Alexis, all with commercial technology looking to expand into India. And 6 Tata Power, Schneider Electric, GE, SunPower Renewables, and Shell, who are looking at working with these startups to help in their energy transition. I would like to thank the team at Global Victoria, Gonal Serbest, Michelle Wade, James Edwards, and Gopi Shankar for all they've done to make the Indian Virtual Trade Mission a reality. As part of the Trade Mission Week, we are very excited to have Manoj Kohli. Manoj is the country head of Softbank India and is supporting interests of Softbank, Softbank Vision Fund, and their over 20 portfolio companies like Ola, Oyo, Paytm, WeWork, Katera, Lenskart, and many others in India. Manoj was also the executive chairman of Softbank Energy, which plans to develop 20 gigawatts of renewable energy projects in India and is already developing over 5 gigawatts of solar and wind projects. Manoj was also the managing director of Bharti Enterprises and is responsible for the growth and operation of the Bharti group of companies in retail, insurance, agri-products, real estate, and mobile internet sector. Manoj's key contribution has been building Airtel as a number 3 telco in the world with over 360 million customers. Manoj holds multiple board roles and has won more awards than I've had hot dinners. Manoj is also the Asia Society Australia Victoria Distinguished Fellow for 2020. Asia Society prepares Australian leaders and community for a deep and sustained engagement with Asia. For over 60 years globally and 20 years in Australia, Asia Society has been building bridges of understanding between Asia, Australia, and the United States across business, policy, education, and the arts. Asia Society Australia is Australia's leading national centre for engagement with Asia, with a centre in Melbourne and an office in Sydney. They are a not-for-profit, non-governmental, and non-political organisation empowered by leading Australian and regional business, government, education, and cultural institutions. Please check them out at asiasociety.org. And a big thank you to Eloise Dolan and the team at Asia Society Australia for making this keynote happen. So today's keynote will delve into 2 topics: investing and creating value in a digital startup, and energy transition to renewables and electric vehicles. We would love to have some audience questions. So for the audience viewing this on the website, please log in and place your questions in the Ask a Question box. For the startups and partners in the webinar with us, please place your questions in the Q&A in Zoom. We'll get to as many as we can over the course of the next hour. So welcome, Manoj, and thank you for being here. Before we delve in, would you be so kind to further introduce yourself?
Thank you, Abs. I think you already exaggerated me, so I don't need to say more. I think I am looking forward to promoting India, Australia, trade, commerce, which in the past has been uh, reasonably low, and I think it has a potential for a great growth. And that's one of my targets is for next 6 months to 1 year, helping Australian entrepreneurs and businessmen to come to India, and helping Indian entrepreneurs and businessmen to go to Australia. Either way, both will be good win-win for both the countries, and win-win for young entrepreneurs of both the countries.
We're very excited for that. So let's talk about the first topic around investing and creating value in a digital startup. So as we've always heard, like software is eating the world, and it's hard to imagine a non-digital environment. So nearly all startups and companies will have a digital element and will deliver value through this. So as an investor, so what do you see are the pillars of the digital investment thesis and value creation process?
This pandemic has, in 8 months, helped the consumer behavior to take a leap of 10 years or even more than 10 years in terms of behavior. Definitely offline business will move to online. Definitely digitization process will be much more catalyzed. Consumer is far more open, confident, and fully involved into digital way of either telemedicine or online education or fintech transactions or e-commerce, online shopping, and many other things. So I am really delighted that today the digital world is actually going to take off in the next 5 to 10 years. And not that physical world is not important. Physical world is as important because digital world is building up on top of the foundation of the physical world. But it makes consumer happier and faster. His or her work faster, transactions faster and more accurate and more precise. So I believe that time is come to digital world to take off. In all the industries, every industry will get digitized, whether it's India, US, China, Australia, any country of the world, Japan. So that is, some trends may be slow, some trends may be faster, but digitization is, the train has left the station.
Excellent. It's good to see. And we are seeing this trend, whether, especially in the digital space, of startups targeting affordable services. So in your views, like, who do you see as the underserved and in what industry?
I particularly the OECD countries, the OECD markets, whether it's US, Europe, Australia, Japan, etc. I think digitization has been picking up quite well, thanks to 4G networks, thanks to smartphones. But in the developing markets, and that's where Asia comes, Africa, LATAM, all these South markets, developing, growing markets, has been a bit slow. But I'm very confident the time has come now to kick off. And I'm already seeing the green shoots in India, where in small towns and villages, even housewives, even people who are less educated, are very open and comfortable using digital business transactions. And they find it definitely more affordable, because if you go to a showroom, the same branded product or a standard product is slightly higher cost, higher priced for the consumer. And if you do it online, it's affordable, it is a standard product, it is branded, and people can trust it. So now the trust on the brand and the trust on the digital process and delivery at home, etc., has become something which the logistics companies, etc., have made it perfect, nearly perfect, if not fully perfect. And therefore, the consumer trust and faith has gone up because of these three factors. One, that it's a standard branded product. Two, that the affordability, the affordability is better than offline. And three, that the logistics of reaching home, the product to reach home, is also in place. So all this has given much more confidence and conviction to the consumers.
Excellent. So I think the trust part kind of comes out a lot, and we've seen as companies start building their customer base, like the cost to acquire kind of hits a certain threshold as we start growth. So any tips around that once we actually get bigger and the cost to acquire becomes huge for like a brand, building that trust? What's your thoughts on that?
No, you are right, Abs. Cost to acquire is crucial. But before you go to that stage, it's very important to have a unique product. If the product is unique and value adds to the life of a consumer, that is the fundamental issue which every startup has to pursue. Once the product is okay, then comes whether are you able to do rapid innovation. That's very important. It's very important that new products, new services, new features come up much faster in regular intervals, which means the innovation engine of the startup has to be much better and very robust. If it is not, then you'll be left behind. Competition will go ahead of you. The third aspect is, as I said earlier, the right pricing, which is affordability. If the consumer doesn't feel value for money, if the consumer feels that there's too much wastage being done and I am getting the brunt of the wastage of cost by the company, consumer will not pay that much. So I believe that these are the factors which are important before we come to cost of acquiring a customer, because once these things are right, then cost can definitely be made more efficient, more cost effective, more productive, by either doing joint marketing with some others who are much bigger than you, or now actually the distribution cost is definitely much coming down compared to my times. I remember when I led Airtel initial period, we built about 3 million retail outlets all over India physically. Can you imagine building 3 million retail outlets physically compared to virtually? Today, that can be done so fast, and much lower cost.
Yeah, I can imagine 3 million physical shops. So we talked about the product side. And the business model is going to be a big part of building this digital startups. And we've always heard AI is the root of all business model investments. But what does that actually mean, and what does that actually look like?
Business model, I feel, is the most important issue for every startup to think about. And it is first has to be conceptual. Now, the characteristics of a profitable business model are that firstly, it delivers the product or service to the customer in time, in right quality, at the right price. Number two, it makes the customer experience positive, which means that customer should feel good while ordering a product or buying a product or ordering or doing a transaction. Number three is that it has to be viable for the startup. If it is not viable, doesn't give a healthy margin, then you can't be running a business model which is really loss-making. So you have to make it viable. Now, viable doesn't mean that on one day it is viable, so it will be viable forever. So which means that it is dynamic. The environment is dynamic, competition is dynamic, consumers are dynamic, they're changing their minds every day. So clearly you have to make it dynamically viable, which means every period, every month, every quarter, you have to think how is your margin behaving and how are you delivering to the customer, how customer is giving you a lot of feedback on good things or bad things, and how your profit margin is behaving, is going up or coming down. Hence, you need to make some tweak to the business model. For example, one of the models, just to come back to Airtel again, we built was a very unique model globally, outsourcing model, which was We were the smallest company in telecom sector, and we had aspirations to be big, and there was no way that we didn't have deep pockets of our competition. So obviously, we had to do something very unique. So we built a unique business model, which was based on outsourcing, where strengths of our partners like Ericsson, Nokia, IBM, etc., were taken. And despite being a small company, we became big because all the strengths were partner strengths were taken. So, but at the same time, the model was viable, profitable, and we continuously tweaked it, continuously improved it, continuously made it more healthier in terms of the most important thing which has emanated out of the pandemic now is that all business models have to be end-to-end digital. Earlier there were some parts were digital and some parts were not digital, but now there's no option. Now everything has to be end-to-end digital so that really the model works very smoothly for the consumer. And also internal controls by the company, by the startup are easy. If it's digital, then controls are easier. If it's physical or manual, then controls become a bit difficult.
So that actually brings us quite neatly onto the digital customer and the 100% digitized business experience. So I know every Sunday morning when I get the notification from my iPhone of my screen time for the week, it's usually a very tough read most weeks. So most of us are digital customers and companies are, as you say, becoming 100% digital. So what does that look like and what is the best practice around serving a digital experience that probably wows a customer?
Okay, the rules of the game are very simple. Firstly, you should reach to the customer who needs your product or your service. Reach is important, and reach is through the distribution online. And luckily, there are many, many distribution methodologies. Second is the brand. The brand has to be known either through marketing or through word of mouth or through personal experience of the customers. And your reputation builds up and brand needs that reputation. And then comes the actual experience when a customer needs your product or your service. Then how easy does he or she find it to be? You have to make the process idiot proof, which means that it has to be so simple that a school going child can do it. Of course, now school going children are brighter than us, so that example may be wrong, but the point I'm making is it has to be simplest possible. But at the same time, while simplicity is important, it also need to have the right kind of controls, right kind of governance, right kind of security, etc., so that customer doesn't lose money. So the time customer spends on browsing, selecting the product or selecting the variety from the variety, and the confidence customer gets that he or she is getting all the information he needs for taking the right decision is very important. And then comes the ordering. Ordering has to be again smooth. The alliances with credit card companies or fintech companies is very important, so that customers feel that yes, this is safe. My money will go to the right company, and I'll get the product from that company in the right time. So customer confidence, customer experience has to be very positive. And I feel that this few minutes of customers' time is most precious for startups to analyze, deeply analyze, because at the end of it, customer should smile. If customer smiles, you won it. That is the victory you always dreamt of.
So I think you also mentioned in that the building that brand's going to be important. So do you think that 2 minutes that you really delight that customer is the part of your brand? Is that how you accelerate your brand, or is there other tips as well that you have to when you're building this digital business?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is the core of a brand. A lot of people think branding is the hoardings on the road, billboards, and the TV commercials. No. Branding is customer experience and the reputation you build. For example, if I'm a satisfied customer, I will tell you, you will tell some friends. So 10 people will know word of mouth that this brand is good. I mean, it really is trustworthy. You should go for it. The TV commercials, the billboards, etc., or internet branding only reinforces the experience, and it does point out or showcase some specific product, a new product which you are launching, or some specific experience which the brand wants you to go through. That for that highlighting is you to spend money and showcase the brand. But otherwise, in my view, the customer experience is the core of branding.
I think that's completely 100% agree on that. We actually have a few questions coming in from our website. This is a really interesting one. It's actually from Eloise from Age Society. So investors are currently being cautious in who they choose to back. What are the types of startups and startup models that investors are prioritizing as we move into the new year?
No, I think there are three big aspects from investor point of view or a VC point of view. Number one is the idea, the product idea. Is the idea good enough for the consumer and good enough or unique enough to beat the competition? I think that is the root of the investment which will be considered. Number two is that the founder or the founding team, maybe 2-3 founders, how are their values, how are their ethics, how are their long-term vision, how are their passion to win in the marketplace? Are they resilient kind of people? Can they cope with ups and downs, etc.? So that is the evaluation of a founder. The third aspect is the founder ready for professionalizing the company? Is he or she ready with building a leadership team and the staffing which is high quality, which is professional, because very frankly, this is most important. If you build a high quality professional team, the startup will win. So these are the aspects which are thought through. Finally, most importantly, is the return analysis, which is done on a very conservative basis, based on margins which are being presented. Of course, you can discount the margins to some extent and make it very realistic and very achievable. And if those margins are healthy and returns are up to the expectation of the VC, then of course they consider the investment.
Thank you. Here's another question coming in, which I think is quite interesting as well, around the future of energy for retailers. There's always been that question that energy has just become a commodity that you just pay for. So where's that actual value being created? So going forward, should the product be bundled into other commodities like phone plans? Like, how does an energy retailer get that edge in a digital world?
The future will be very different from past. I don't think past is any reference to what is going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. I think energy is going through the biggest transformation across the globe, energy sector. And those transformations, one is on renewable, that fossil is moving to renewable. Second is that it is definitely automotive sector will get the energy rather than driven by IC engine. And third, what you said very rightly, that energy will be sold differently. And maybe energy could also be branded, because you will need energy for home, you will need energy for office, you will need energy for your car, you will need energy, and maybe some countries already are thinking of privatizing it and allowing an app where you have a choice of 2-3 energy companies of your location or your district, and you can make a choice. And maybe after some time, if you have a feedback, you can change the choice also. So those things will start happening in the next 5 years, in my view.
So I think we're also seeing that traceability of energy is going to be a big part, especially whether it's coming from brown coal, other types of fossil, whether it's green. We're also seeing that actually in the hydrogen space, which we'll touch a bit on in the next section. Just one final question before we move on to the renewables EV transition part. So what are your thoughts on the overlap between the digital and physical world? So something like augmented reality, where do you see that playing a role as we go forward?
No, I think this issue is different from market to market. For example, in the Western world, OECD markets, the physical infrastructure is very strong. And therefore, digital need is a bit less. I mean, the need is there, but it's a bit less compared to developing world. In developing world, the physical infrastructure is weak. And therefore, need for digital to make a leap for the customer for a better quality of life is high. The need is higher. And now, for a customer living in a small town in Asia or Africa or LATAM, he or she only can expose himself or herself to the world by a virtual, through the digital world, not through the physical world. Maybe the big guys staying in big town cities are exposed, but not in small towns, villages, etc., etc. So for them, digital connectivity is most important. Now, coming to augmented reality, that is something which is digital plus, that you're showing something which is more than what you need today. You're showing something which is about future. You're showing a reality which will happen maybe in future. So that is a different perspective. But I feel that in the developing world, Asia, Africa, LATAM, digital requirement need of the consumer is far greater. And therefore, these digital services will do much better in developing world because of the fundamental need.
Okay. Thanks. So we'll move on to the next part of talking about the energy transition through renewables and electric vehicles. So with the energy transition occurring, what are the current trends and where do you see the future trends and opportunities in this energy transition?
You know, I've been blessed that I was involved in a global transition which happened in the last 25 years, which was from landline to mobile internet. And can you imagine that 25 years back, you were using landline, and today when you see your weekly iPhone consumption, it must be surprising to you, yourself. So you can't imagine yourself 25 years back. It's difficult because the transformation has been so huge and so global. In the next 25 years, the biggest transformation will be energy transformation globally. And because not only it will impact the energy sector, but also it will impact the transport sector. Because while energy side is moving from fossil to renewable, the transport side will move from IC engine to EVs. And in the middle is something called storage battery, which will be used by all EVs and which will be used by solar and wind also. If you are to make 24/7 RE, renewable energy, which is RTC, round the clock renewable energy, then storage battery is crucial. But storage battery has to be at a affordable price, not expensive. Today it is expensive, so therefore it's growing, but it's not growing as fast. But I'm sure in next 3-4 years it will grow much faster when affordability is better. So I feel that this is the single biggest transformation for the world, and therefore energy transition, both in energy sector and transport sector, has to be done in a very systematic, orderly fashion. If not, then the side effects will be serious because, frankly, the people side effect, all the people, millions of miners, coal miners, millions of people working in thermal plants, millions of mechanics who are engine mechanics, IC engine, IC engine, car or scooter or truck mechanics. All those have to be reskilled, upskilled, cross-skilled by respective governments so that those people can get used to another skill, which is more on the electric vehicle side or on the renewable side. Similarly, all the thermal plants, if they continue the PPAs, because PPAs are 20 years, 25 years, country by country, that is fine. But if the PPAs end early, then they will have debt to pay, and banks can have non-performing assets. So that also we have to safeguard, that banks should not have NPAs and no financial side effect of this transition. So the transition has to be done in a very smooth, systematic, orderly fashion. Every government has to decide based on its own ideology how fast or slow they would like to have it.
I think the rate of change has always been the challenge with a transformation in any sector, whether that's telcos, energy, or any other one. So rate of change really is a big issue. Yeah, so we see a lot of different parts of the value chain that's demanding the change. So we see investors having a carbon portfolio. So they'll look at where they want to invest their capital, and they're driving that. How do you see investors playing a role in this transition?
No, globally, investors are really prioritizing both renewable energy as well as EV, as well as storage battery. And we can see that across the world. Many banks are already allocating large proportion of their funding to renewable energy and not to fossil. So they are moving the quota from fossil or oil to renewable energies. And therefore, the funding for large projects of solar, wind, as well as for storage, battery manufacturing, etc., is getting a lot of priority across the world. So I feel that both the investors and the banks are giving priority to both these areas.
So, and the next 6, 12, 18 months, where do you see the opportunities there for startups to play in this transition?
No, I feel that let me give you 2, 3 examples. Firstly, the solar plants are still not heavily automated or digitized. So I'm sure many startups who are more on software side, SaaS side, can help the solar industry to automate itself, to make it more digitized, use robots, use drones for security, for maintenance, etc., etc. So a lot of upgradation of technology can take place. Second is luckily the wind side is also improving, and there again the digitization, how controls can improve, how you can work even in slow wind conditions, I think is important, where some of the technology startups can do some work, can help. Then on the EV side, the startups are already thinking of charging stations, because charging stations are required across the world. And I'm already getting some updates from some parts of the world, including Australia, New Zealand, that some startups are looking at collaborating with big brands like McDonald's or Pizza Hut and many others to give them charging stations for their outlets and really work with them. So startups are getting different kind of new opportunities for this revolution. And I feel that many more will happen in the next 2-3 years. You will see on the technical side, on the market side, for the consumer, I think it's full of opportunities.
And in India in particular, where do you see that? Is it still the EV side? Is it still the solar side? Is that where you see the biggest opportunities in the Indian market?
Yesterday was a very important day because the first time Indian market saw a tariff of 2 rupees. 2 rupees for solar. 2 rupees means that it is less than 3 cents, 3 US cents, which is fantastic. I think it's a very, very affordable price for any consumer in the world, and it is clean energy, which is fantastic. So India has the PM himself has taken a vision, a grand vision of 450 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030 and 175 gigawatt by 22. And India already has more than 90 gigawatt of renewable energy, and I think there are huge opportunities in this entire sector. And India needs a investment of nearly $300 billion in the next 10 years for this sector alone. On the EV side, the process has started. Government has already announced some goals, some support systems, etc., for EV to take off. Of course, it is trying to balance between the existing automotive companies so that they continue for a certain period. But clearly, government now is building new policies which are friendly to EV sector as well as storage battery. So I think both sectors will have major opportunities for global investors.
And I think you mentioned like this 2 rupees is amazing. I think the trend has been towards zero for a long time. So how, if the marginal cost of energy does trend towards zero, what do you see the impact of that, not only in the energy sector, but probably for the economy in these countries?
It can't be zero because there is a cost of production. There's a cost of investment into plant and machinery. So it can't be zero, but already it is from a level of 17 rupees where solar started. Can you imagine in last 10 years, it's gone down 10, 12 years, gone down from 17 rupees to 2 rupees already. And 2 rupees itself is so affordable that poorest parts of society, the lower strata of society can also afford it. So it's not that 2 rupees is not affordable. It is very, very affordable. So I feel that if industry has to invest 300 billion in next 10 years, then the businesses have to be profitable. And if they're profitable, they'll invest much more. So therefore, I am personally not looking at zero cost. I think the prices will continue to go down, decline, that I agree. And I think as the technology, there is a joint impact of technology improvement, whether it is solar and wind, as well as the economies of scale. When both these things come together, both these forces come together, technology and economies of scale, the cost has to decline. There's no way that cost will not decline. And that process is already happening in the last 10 years. And it will get expedited. The only thing is that now storage battery cost in the next 5 years is more critical because the solar module cost, the wind turbine cost, etc., is already coming down quite well. But storage battery cost has to come down faster in the next 3-4 years, so that cost of using the battery in the time at night for a solar plant, using the battery at the time when the wind is not blowing, should be also affordable. So that is a challenge which will happen in the next, I feel it will take another 3-4 years. After that, you can have RTC renewable energy, round the clock renewable energy, because today the base load energy of thermal is the majority power because it's round the clock, it's base load. Whereas renewable energy is seen as intermittent. So that intermittent energy does not fulfill the needs of the consumers. And therefore, storage battery at affordable cost is important.
I think we get to that really interesting stage where once the cost curve is going down for solar, as we saw, for storage, we see a very similar cost curve going down. And people are reluctant to pull the trigger at a certain price because they want to wait next 6 months, they want to wait next 12 months to see whether they don't want to be locked into a more expensive price as the cost curve is going down. Like as a startup or as an energy company, how do you get over that fear that either corporates have or large organizations have to lock in a PPA or lock in some certainty into the market?
No, luckily the large companies whose manufacturing process is a guzzling process, energy guzzling process, like cement, steel, aluminium, data centers, etc. If the percentage of the total cost, if the percentage of energy cost is more than 10% of the total cost, let's say in some cases it's 20%, 30%, even 40% maybe for aluminium sector, there the benefit is very, very large. And therefore, decision lies with the board whether they want to take benefit today or they want to wait for 2-3 years, that's fine. But waiting will bring down the tariff surely, but it will also take away the savings you will make in these 2-3 years. So it's better to start the savings now when it's already affordable. I feel that many companies have already initiated this process of having at least a part of their energy consumption requirement from renewable energy, 20%, 30%. Still 70% is fossil. Gradually, this 20-30% will go up to majority in the next few years. So I feel that now decision making is becoming easier, because at any point of time, the cost of capex of a new solar plant or a wind plant has to be met with some profitability. So at that time, let's say if today the cost, the price is 2 rupees, then 2 rupees itself has a huge benefit for the consumption company. Of course, maybe in 1 year it will be lower. So, but the benefit of 1 year you lost.
No.
So it's a trade-off decision by the company.
And we're also seeing a new trend in terms of the circular economy part and trying to keep within that circular economy framework. There's a question on the website, and one of the founders has also have a similar question. In terms of the waste to energy sector, what challenges do you see for that waste to energy projects in India?
No, I think this is a huge potential, not only in India, but across the world, because waste has to be managed. There are tons and tons, millions of tons of waste which has to be managed. The problem which this sector is facing is that it is not yet fully organized, and it is still not fully understood by the investors or bankers, etc., etc. I personally, I have a conviction that this sector will do well. It just needs to get organized, get the business model right, and it will be great for the world, because using waste for creating energy is most environment friendly, and we should encourage it. It is in India also. It is slowly picking up from small projects, but I feel it could have much larger projects in next 5 years.
So, I want to move on to hydrogen, because this has been a big topic in Australia. We have a national hydrogen roadmap. The federal government, state governments are all investing heavily as a future economic driver for Australia, as a domestic fuel as well as an international export fuel. So what role do you see hydrogen playing in the renewable energy mix? Do you have any timeframes on that? And does India have a specific hydrogen strategy?
I think the hydrogen policy is under evolution, not only in India, but in many, many countries of the world. Australia may be a bit ahead of many countries because of its natural hydrogen capacity. So I feel it will play an important role. The only thing is, again, as I said, that how large the plants can be, is the technology reached to a near maturity, does it give adequate profitability, etc. All those questions are being addressed now in Australia and even in India. And I think I feel that next 2 years you will see larger hydrogen plants coming up.
And do you see India as a consumer of hydrogen or like a manufacturer of hydrogen, especially these 2 cents of rupees, like this solar part? Do you see that as a potential input into the hydrogen economy?
Yeah, in India, frankly, solar will be the most affordable, because India has huge amount of sunshine, and that's thanks to God that we have a lot of sunshine. In the coastal areas, we have a lot of wind, onshore wind and offshore wind both, and of course we have hydel. So all the three, hydel, solar, and wind, are gifts of nature to us, and I'm sure all three will do well. Hydrogen will also come in, but may not get a huge proportion, because other three are already evolved and the costs are much lower.
Excellent. So we've got a few questions coming in from the audience. So I might go to a few of those. There's an interesting one around your thoughts on the part of the energy storage value chain, the rare earth materials part. Are you concerned around that in terms of is there enough lithium ion raw materials to satiate the appetite that the industry has, or are we going to have to look at alternative storage mechanisms as well?
No, I'm not concerned on this because, frankly, the multiple technologies which are getting evolved and researched and piloted, they all don't use lithium. Some of them use lithium, some of them don't use lithium. So there are non-lithium technologies also which are coming up very well. So while lithium is important for some technologies, and I think the lithium reserves are adequate across the world to take care of that technology needs, but non-lithium also picking up well. So I feel that at least on the raw material side, there shouldn't be any major problem or any shortage, including cobalt and other raw materials which are required. Because I feel that multiple technologies use multiple raw materials, and therefore the diversity helps and gives safety to the future.
And if we do run out, there's always a meteorite somewhere in space that can go mine in the future. There's plenty of those. And I think we're also seeing by the end, we're seeing some end of life of assets coming up. So early solar farms, early wind farms, 20, 25-year life of assets. Similarly, in the battery space, some early batteries are coming towards the end of their life. In the next 5 years, 10 years, we'll see some end of life of assets as well. Where do you see this as a big opportunity for companies to play in around recycling, repurposing, giving second life to these assets?
Absolutely. I think what you're saying is right. Business case has to be made, financial case has to be made, because old solar modules were expensive and their efficiencies were much lower than what efficiencies we are getting today. Today, we're getting fantastic efficiencies from solar modules. Same applies to wind turbines. Wind turbines, which are coming up now, are fantastic in terms of technology, especially when these turbines can work in slow wind conditions, not very fast wind conditions, which is great. So replacement is a good idea, but it has to be financially healthy, financially approved, because if financially it makes sense, then it should be replaced. And also then the other thing you said, the replacement leading to how you reuse some of the material, because one can reuse. For example, modules, if you continue to use, it's not giving you extra cost. But because the cost of new modules is much, much lower and efficiency much higher, therefore that plus factor makes it viable for you to replace. But replacement doesn't mean that you will not reuse the material, including storage battery material. That can be reused. I've seen lithium recovery process of 99% recovery. So it will all be reused.
I think there's huge opportunities there as well. For startups to play in. So one of the other questions that came in from the website, so do you see large corporates playing a role in the energy transition, or will they remain energy consumers?
So corporates are playing a very, very important role. Either they play a role of being in energy sector, being in transport sector, being in storage battery sector or charging stations, etc., or utilizing RE. So there are many companies which want to become green companies, and they want to say that my product is green, I don't use fossil. So they are very important for this transition of energy from fossil to renewable. So I feel every company, 10% or 15% will be directly producing it, but 80-90% will be consuming it. So the consuming industry of companies will play a much bigger role.
Excellent. A few other questions. So in terms of, we've talked about scaling a digital startup. In terms of hardware startups, we always say hardware is hard. That's kind of like the thing that everyone says. What's your tips around scaling a hardware startup generally and also in India as well?
No, hardware startup is not hard, not more hard than normal startup. It has its own difficulties, which even the software startup will have. India's particular case, the PM, the government and the PM have announced a new slogan of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which means self-reliant India. And under that, India is building major focus on manufacturing and moving a lot of supply chains to India. So that process will be beneficial to the country because of local employment. Luckily, India is good at manufacturing, especially if you see in the automotive sector. Our auto component industry has Six Sigma quality. So which means that we have capability to build Six Sigma quality products, components, and similarly hardware. Whether it is IT hardware, whether it is telecom hardware, can be built in India, manufactured at a reasonable cost. Initially, of course, in the first 2-3 years in the gestation period, the cost is a bit high, but as soon as the gestation period is over, cost comes down and become globally competitive. So I see very, very major growth in hardware manufacturing business in India in the next decade.
And what's your views on the cost of customer acquisition in the B2B scenario? How do you grow that part, the B2B? Because we always see that sales cycles are long. They can sometimes bleed a startup. So what's your views on that?
Yeah, sales cycles are long. It's easier than B2C in that sense that you know who are the customers because there are finite number of customers compared to B2C, which is infinite. But each customer has a major expectation, sometimes differing expectations. Sometimes the process of selection itself is very long and arduous. So one has to have patience, one has to have very strong pipeline, and how that pipeline is divided into early stage, mid stage of piloting, etc., then late stage where commercials, etc. So for every stage of that pipeline, one has to be ready, one has to have competencies and patience and processes. So companies I've seen who have this kind of way of working culture, for example, all the IT companies of India, Infosys, TCS, Wipro, and others, they do all B2B business, and they're fantastic because the processes are so well crafted, well constructed, and well adhered to that they win a lot of business across the world.
Excellent. Got about 5 minutes or so left. There's one question I'd love to ask around reducing carbon emissions. This is going to be a major challenge this decade and beyond. How do we accelerate the reduction of carbon emissions? And what are your views on creating an economic mechanism such as a price on carbon being part of this equation?
Yeah, I think this is the fundamental goal of renewable energy and EV transformation. Luckily, last week, the PM of India made a statement to G20 meeting that India will not only achieve the carbon reduction, I think we are targeting about 35% reduction by 2030. India will actually outpace and do better than that, which is very important for the community, which is very important for our next generation. Now, I think both carrot and stick policies have to be there in every country because there has to be an incentive to do more of renewable energy, more of EVs, etc. And on the other hand, if there are plants and there are vehicles which are encouraging pollution, I think there has to be some penalties for that, which is very important because both sides we have to do so that this time period can be catalyzed, can be shortened as much as possible.
It always ends up being a political question in most cases, creating this economic models around abating carbon. Another question that's coming from the website. So B2B SaaS companies succeed only when they penetrate Western markets. That, I'm guessing that's an assumption. Is B2B SaaS still a small market in India? Will that change come anytime soon?
No, picking up fast. Yes, traditionally it was thought that SaaS companies like this first have to, penetrate into US or Europe or Japan or Korea, and then go into developing markets. But I think now things are changing. Even in the developing markets like India and Asia and LATAM, the propensity of small and medium customers to use the SaaS products and services is much better. Much more openness is there in the minds of CFOs and CEOs and CIOs to use these SaaS products and services. And I feel that traditional bias that it will only happen first in OECD and then will gradually go away.
Awesome. Cool. So a few lighter questions to end on. I always like asking this question when I'm interviewing someone. So when we get to fly again, imagine I'm on a flight to London. What book or podcast would you recommend I read or listen to?
No, flying will happen soon because the vaccines are coming in. I feel that there's so many great books which are coming up on how the companies, the startups have built themselves, whether it is a big giant like Amazon or Apple or Facebook, or smaller companies. I mean, for example, companies like Paytm, Ola, Uber, Lenskart, and many others. These companies are iconic companies, and I think how they have transformed the consumer experience is something which is already written. Some have written books, some are anyway, you can find it on the internet. So please do that, because how these companies are built, how the idea came, how the ideas changed, what were the initial roadblocks which these companies, these entrepreneurs faced, how did they overcome the roadblocks? Maybe sometimes they had some victories, some defeats, etc., which is fine, it's part of the game. But I think reading experiences of entrepreneurs in building such remarkable startup businesses is very, very worthwhile.
It's inspirational stuff. And the final question. So Virat Kohli or Steve Smith, who's the better batsman and who will win the series that's coming up between India and Australia?
No, I am obviously biased. So both for India and both for Virat, because he is a Kohli. So but Australian team is a very, very high quality. What I love about Australian team is that it has a fighting spirit, which India never had adequately till a few years back. But now with the new generation in India, there's a fighting spirit, there's a competitive spirit. Most importantly, India has picked up on fitness, thanks to Virat and many other fit players who are very, very fit in fielding and catching. So I think it will be a very tough competition. And from a consumer point of view, spectator point of view, we love to see a close match which goes up to the wire. That is what we love.
I'm excited for that as well. So thank you, Manoj, for your time and such an insightful session as well. I'd also like to thank Asia Society, Global Victoria, our startups partners and guests who joined us today. Before we head off, a quick plug for the Startup Showcase that's happening on Friday. This is your opportunity to hear from the startups on the trade mission and see how they can help play a part in the energy transition happening in India. Showcase Friday the 27th at 10:30 a.m. Indian Standard Time, 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. To find out more and to register, head to in20.startupbootcamp.com.au. That's in20.startupbootcamp.com.au. Thank you again, Manoj. Stay safe, and we'll see you all at the showcase on Friday. Thank you all.
Thank you, Abs. Good luck to you.